Welcome back to another edition of the Making the Madness College Basketball Podcast. This is Jonathan and Sean here with you, and we are going to break down the American. Uh, thanks again to all those who have left reviews. I think I forgot to mention KSU Wildcard or Wildcats 15, 12, 16. They left the Big 12 review last week. Royal Fan left a AAC review. So we're going to get into the AAC because we got to do what the reviewers say. If you want your voices heard, leave the 5-star review, leave a comment which conference you want us to break down, and we will break down that conference. So, Sean, it's AAC time.
Yeah, the AAC is an interesting conference. I mean, you just look at last year. There was a point where we're like, is this going to be a one-bid league? But Houston was able to, of course, be in, right? That was the obvious one. And then Wichita State ended up making the tournament also as one of the last four in. Memphis was on the bubble. But it was a disappointing season for Cincinnati, who ended up firing John Brannon for some, definitely not good things he did outside of the basketball court, I guess, or maybe on the basketball court. But yeah, John Brannon got fired, and then they hired Wes Miller. So that's definitely a step in the right direction. UCF, they had a down year last year, too, even though they beat Florida State on the road. One of the more intriguing results of last year that ended up not really meaning anything. And SMU was disappointing once again last year. So it was definitely a down year for the AAC, and this is really a big year for them as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Houston, of course, going to the Final Four. I mean, you can't take that away from them. It was also kind of the easiest run to the Final Four. So I'll say that. So Houston didn't. I think their toughest game the entire season, with the exception of the Baylor game, their toughest win was against Texas Tech. So, but you
That was a
move
great
on.
game, though.
Yeah, it was a good early season matchup. Uh, yeah, but I mean, beating up on the American, and then their tournament games were against Rutgers, Syracuse, Oregon State to get to the Final Four, as well as Cleveland State. But I mean, you could argue their toughest game of the season was against Memphis, and certainly Memphis now comes into the season probably as the favorites in this league now that they have Imani Bates, Jalen Duran, just two fantastic recruits to add on to a kind of already team that you'll. I know I think had them at number one prior to those two committing. Now they're number one for basically everyone.
Yeah, I definitely did have Memphis ahead of Houston before Amani Bates and Jalen Duran committed. And that was just because I loved what I saw in the NIT last year. Obviously, you lose Boogie Ellis, you lose DJ Jeffries, you lose Damian Baugh from that run. But at the same time, I haven't Musa Cisse also, but I haven't seen a complete offense like that from Memphis in a number of years. They were able to make much better shots. They took much better shots, which was a huge issue for them. They're turning the ball over less, and they just looked like a more complete offensive unit. And of course, with their run and jump trapping style of defense, they're going to be tough on that side of the floor no matter what. But I just love DeAndre Williams, Landers Nolly, and Lester Quinones. And for me, that was really why I was like, okay, this team is the team to beat in the conference. They're experienced now. That was the issue with Memphis a few years back when they had James Wiseman, Precious Achiuwa, Lester Quinones, and all those other freshmen. They had 8 true freshmen. This year, they only have a number of true freshmen that'll play actual roles on the team. And I think that they're going to be a much better team. They're going to be more experienced. They need to turn the ball over less. They need to make more free throws. But there's no question there's talent on the team. The big question, of course, is who's going to be the point guard of the team, who's going to handle the ball late in games. Is it going to be Amani Bates? Is it going to be Alex Lomax, Earl Timberlake, Lester Quinones? Who's going to be the ball handler when it matters? But there's no question that the talent on the team is better than any other team in the conference.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just kind of look at this rotation. Obviously, I think Amani Bates is the guy they're going to probably have run the point, but I mean, it will kind of probably be a little bit of point guard committee They'll have Bates run it, probably have a starting lineup of Amai Bates, Lester Quinones, Landers Nolly, DeAndre Williams, Jalen Duran. They'll obviously bring Alex Lomax. You have Earl Timberlake come off the bench. You can have them run the point. You could have Lester Quinones run the point. So I know Amai Bates isn't necessarily a true point guard, but I don't think it will ultimately matter that much when you have as much shooting and scoring on the team. The real key is just limit the turnovers, because you don't necessarily have to. Like, Memphis can play a lot of iso ball, like, in still be fine to win games. They just have enough talent on the court.
They shouldn't, though.
Yeah, they shouldn't. They should move the ball around and all that. But I mean, even if they play iso ball, like, they still at a minimum should finish second in the American. They have that much talent on the roster, and limiting the turnovers is good. The other thing too, defensively, they are going to be tough. You line up Jalen Durant 6'10", DeAndre Williams 6'9", Amai Bates 6'8", Landers Nolly 6'7", Lester Quinones 6'5", Earl Timberlake off the bench 6'6". I mean, those are long, athletic guys. You have Chandler Lawson, who can play off the list or the bench. You have Josh Minot. Of course, Alex Lomax, not as long and athletic, but he can get up in guys' faces. So, I mean, you look at this team; they're going to lock up defensively. That's the one thing of the Penny Hardaway era that they've done really well, and especially last season, they locked up teams defensively. They will continue to do that this season, and then the offense, should be good enough. I think this team, they'll probably, I don't know their non-conference schedule by heart. I'm not.
They play Virginia Tech.
Easy win.
I wouldn't say that.
They might lose that game.
No, I think they'll win. They play. Yeah. Here's one where I'm like, okay, this will be a tough game. They play Murray State. That's not an easy game.
Yeah.
It's a bye game, but it's not an easy game.
Yeah. They will lose a few games throughout the season. Like, I would say maybe they go probably a 31 game schedule. I bet they go like 27-4. Like, that would be my guess. Because
27-4. That's lofty expectations. I mean, I have them like top 7 in the country right now, but 27-4. That's like, they would be like probably second in the country if they went 27-4.
Well, here's the thinking. I think they lose like 2 games early in the season. I don't know, against who, and then they'll go probably like 16 or 18-2 in conference play, because the Americans, like, other than Houston, Wichita State, like, I think they take care of all these other teams in the American, because the American, I don't think, is that deep and not that good either.
I don't know. I mean, we'll get into it obviously, but the American's better than it was last year. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah. But even then, like, I still think Memphis is just going to be able to overwhelm teams with their talent. And once you get past once you get to the Temple, Tulsa, Tulane, South Florida, ECU, I mean, those are
win.
Yeah, those are easy wins.
But you can't just walk in. You just can't expect to just go into Coke Arena in Wichita and be able to get an easy win.
Yeah, they will have a couple tough games, but I think they lose 2 conference games.
Yeah, probably. I mean, in this conference too, I could see. But, like, if they go at Cincinnati and lose, it wouldn't surprise me if that was, like, the third loss they have. And then they lose, at Houston. They lose at Cincinnati. They lose at Wichita. None of those would surprise me.
Yeah. I would say I think they split against Houston and then lose, I'll say, at Wichita. That'll be my 2 losses I pick out for them.
I think they'll lose at Cincinnati too.
Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, but I mean, Memphis is going to be very good. They have the depth that and yeah, the good thing about depth is if you have an injury here or there, let's say Landers Nolly, has to miss a couple games. I mean, Earl Timberlake can come right in and might even be better than Landers Nolly because I do like Earl Timberlake to be very good this season.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing about this Memphis team. Like, I don't know who their leading scorer is going to be. I honestly would probably bet on it being DeAndre Williams. Like, I just feel like he's going to end up scoring like 14 a game. But if like Amani Bates is like 12 a game, Nolly is 10 a game, Quinones is 8 a game, Timberlake is 6 a game, Duran has 8 a game. Like, none of that would surprise me. If they have like 9 guys or 10 guys averaging like 7 or 8 plus points per game, and their leading scorer is 13 or 14 points per game in the same style of Florida State, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it'll kind of be. I could see it like being one of those situations where it's like one person drops 25 a night, and it's like a different person that does that. But in the end, I think Amani will lead the team in scoring just because he'll have the ball in his hand more than anyone.
Probably, but I think we all know Amani Bates can score. Like, we want to see Amani Bates pass. Like, that's what we want to see. We want to see if he could be a true 6'8" point guard.
Yeah. If he can, they're going to be really tough. As is, they're already pretty tough to beat.
Absolutely.
Next team here, it is the Houston Cougars. Obviously, they go to a Final Four last year. Didn't necessarily have the toughest road, as said, but you just got to play who's in front of you. They played who was in front of them. Ultimately, they lost to the eventual national champion Baylor Bears in blowout fashion. But this team, they returned Marcus Sasser, who was certainly very good as a scorer. He's going to be very good this season. They bring back Tremont Mark. They add in Kyler Edwards. They have the offensive rebounding front court. Reggie Chaney, Fabian White, Josh Carlton. Josh Carlton coming in from UConn. So this is a team that is going to be once again pretty good.
Yeah, that Kelvin Sampson has really just instilled a great culture at Houston. They're going to continue winning. I mean, you look at the recent, losses of players they've had, whether it's Armani Brooks or Corey Davis, Nate Hinton, who they lost last year. Nate Hinton left last year, very unexpectedly. Nobody expected him to stay in the NBA draft, of course, went undrafted, and he ends up, being a player that could have had them maybe win the national championship, but instead they go to the Final Four. And this year, you're losing Quentin Grimes. He was a first-round pick to the New York Knicks. You lose Justin Gorham, who was your leading rebounder last season, and you also lose Dejan Jarreau, who was just an elite defender in all levels of the game. But who's going to be that guy next year? Is it Marcus Sasser? He shot 33% from deep last year. That's going to have to improve. But Kyler Edwards comes in from Texas Tech, a 3-and-D guy was a big factor on a lot of really good Texas Tech teams. He fits the Houston mold perfectly with the amount of offensive rebounds they're going to get. They're going to get second chance opportunities, kick out to the perimeter, and Kyler Edwards is going to be right there for a jumper. One addition, though, that is not getting nearly enough love is Taze Moore from Cal State Bakersfield. 6'5", really athletic, and plays hard on the defensive end. That fits the Kelvin Sampson mold perfectly. He's going to be a sneaky glue guy piece for this Cougars team. Tremont Mark's a guy I'd like to see take a jump. Only 24% from deep last year. Obviously had that huge play in the NCAA tournament round of 32 against Rutgers. Got the nice and one. He's long. He can play the 2, the 3, and even some small ball 4 if you need him to. I think he's a good player. I could see him being that kind of Nate Hinton guy that averages like 7, 8 rebounds per game as a 6'5" player. But he's going to have to improve on the offensive end a little bit. And then you add a freshman, Robbie Armbruster, who I like quite a bit. But, of course, it's a lot of what Houston does is schematic. I mean, they play hard. They're going to defend really tough, and they're going to get a lot of offensive rebounds. They post trap on the defensive end. And the offensive rebounds, though, is really what creates a lot of opportunities for the team. It's not always about what the first shot looks like. It's about the second shot, and they usually get really good second shots.
Yeah, I mean the offensive rebounding is why they had as much success as they had because, the 3-guard look with Grimes, Sasser, Giroux, like, they were good shooters. They weren't, I guess Grimes turned into a pretty elite shooter, but like Sasser wasn't an elite shooter. Giroux certainly wasn't an elite shooter. And they were certainly inconsistent at times, but when you have Justin Gordon, Fabian White was kind of later in the season. You have Reggie Chaney, Bryson Gresham, like all just crashing the glass and getting offensive boards and getting third chances and fourth chances. I mean, eventually that adds up and it wears on your opponents, especially. So I think the offensive rebounding, you're going to see it stay there. They obviously have Reggie Chaney, Fabian White, Josh Carlton coming over from UConn. I think will kind of do the same thing. So the offensive rebounding is going to be there. The jump shooting is going to be there. I think it's going to be a kind of similar team. I think they get a little bit worse. Obviously, losing Quentin Grimes, trading Quentin Grimes for Kyler Edwards. Essentially, that's losing a little bit of value. Or I guess maybe it's Kyler Edwards for Dejan Giroux, since Giroux's kind of the point. Kyler Edwards will be the point guard this year. Not too big of a loss, but obviously Tremont Mark is not near the level of Quentin Grimes, especially last season. Quentin Grimes, who could have been an All-American now that I think back on it. And then you obviously, Taze Moore is going to be a good piece. They have some freshman guards like Roman Walker, Javier Francis. Francis is a forward. I mean, those players that, you could see, last year, I don't think anyone was, necessarily expecting Tremont Mark to come out and be, the type of role player he was last season. He obviously had a good season. I think the year before was Caleb Mills, who was like underrated recruit who was really good as a freshman. Marcus Sasser, same thing. So Houston's good at just finding guards, these freshman guards that are under-recruited, underrated, and putting them in place and making them work. I think they'll do kind of the same thing. And Roman Walker, I think, could be that type of player this year. Houston, I don't think they are a top 10 team. They might sneak into the top 10. Like, they're going to just kind of play what they are. I think they'll be between 10 and 20 in the rankings all year. I think if Memphis, for whatever reason, doesn't come together or loses a couple games here or there, I think Houston would be the team to win the American if Memphis struggles. But Houston's just going to be, they are what they are.
Yeah, and that's a great team every year. The last 4 years, Houston has finished in the top 18 of KenPom, and the last 2 years they've been top 10. So this is, an elite bunch that Kelvin Sampson's assembled. It doesn't really matter who's on the team, and that sounds like rude to say probably, and it's not a slight against any of the players. They have a ton of talent, and that's, another thing that Kelvin Sampson's done. He's brought in a ton of talent, but a lot of what they do is just scheme-based. And, as long as you have shooters and guys who are going to play hard in offensive rebound, you're going to be able to win at Houston. And that's what they have on this team. They're not a top 10 team, but they're a top 15 team. And they're going to make a run in March again if the matchups fall together correctly.
Absolutely. Next team up, it is the Wichita State Shockers. They made the NCAA tournament, just squeaking in. Might have been the last team in. They were certainly in the first.
They shouldn't have been in, but yeah.
The net did not support it.
Nothing supported it. I don't know how they got
it. You got to put 68 teams in the field somehow.
They should not have been in over Louisville or Colorado State.
Louisville, they don't deserve it. Give it to Colorado.
Fine, yeah. Colorado State should have been in. But, the Mountain West are like, you know what? Instead of getting, potentially Boise State and Colorado State in addition to Utah State and San Diego State, they could have had 4 teams. But they were like, you know what? Let's play one extra week of games that got canceled, and let's put our 2 teams that are right on the bubble. Let's have one play makeup against Fresno State. Oh, wait, Boise State lost that game. They're out. And then Colorado State, let's play them against Nevada, who wasn't, a quadrant 1 game, but they sure were good enough to beat Colorado State as Grant Sherfield hit the game-winning buzzer beater 3 from like 30 feet. So, yeah, if the Mountain West didn't do that, Colorado State and Boise State probably would have been in. So
I think Boise still misses, but Colorado will.
losing to Fresno certainly didn't help.
Yeah, I think they were still on the out. But anyway, lesson to be learned for the Mountain West:
Never do that again.
Don't add landmines to teams.
They just made the road to the NCAA tournament just infinitely more difficult for no reason.
Yeah,
like that's just like why? Like, even like there was just nothing to gain for either of those teams in those games. Nothing. So it was just insanity to me. But whatever.
Yeah, but anyway, they return Tyson Etienne, Dexter Dennis, Morris Udeze. They're their 4 leading scorers. They also return Ricky Council Jr. or the 4th. They bring in.
There's a lot of Ricky Councils.
Yeah, I didn't know who Ricky Council the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd were, but the 4th is
one of them played at UMBC.
Okay.
One of his siblings. I'm fairly certain that's a thing. I'm pretty sure he. I'm not making that up. I swear. Let me see here.
I'll believe you.
Ricky Council II played at UMBC.
There we go.
That's his sibling. Yeah, they're siblings.
Joe Pleasant comes in from Abilene Christian. They also add in
Quay Grant.
Who will probably take over as the point guard next season. And kind of move Etienne, Dexter Dennis at the kind of off the ball. They have Clarence Jackson. So I think a kind of solid top 7. And they're going to probably be the same bubble team they were a season ago.
Yeah, they're a bubble team for sure. Isaac Brown did a great job considering the circumstances. Obviously, the Greg Marshall disaster. He just, again, not a very good person. Greg Marshall's not a good person. That's not really a hot take. He's just not a good dude. And obviously, he deservedly is no longer the coach at Wichita State. Isaac Brown, well-deserved, got a contract to be the full-time head coach at Wichita State after being under the interim tag last year and taking Wichita to the NCAA tournament. I feel like that's one of the more underrated storylines of last season. Under all that program had going against it, Isaac Brown was able to take them to the NCAA tournament. I just think that's an incredible accomplishment. I mean, you just look at what they lost from that year before. You lost Grant Sherfield. You lose Eric Stevenson. You lose Asborn Midgard, who ended up being one of the best players on an NCAA tournament team at Grand Canyon. And you lost several other key contributors. From last year's team, you lose Alterique Gilbert. You get a better player with Quay Grant, so I think that's fine. You lose Trey Wade, who's a really good defender. That one will hurt a little bit, but, Quay Grant and Tyson Etienne, there is not a better guard duo in this conference than that one because Quay Grant is able to score off the dribble. He's really good as an ISO player, as is Tyson Etienne. Both can go get buckets late in the game. Both can facilitate. Those are two guys that are true point guards, and they'll be able to play next to each other. So, one thing you got to think about here, it's like, in a football sense, I guess, like when you have a former quarterback on the field and he's playing as a receiver or something, he'll always see those intricacies of certain defenses. And it's the same thing in basketball. They'll see certain things off the ball and they'll be able to, make some plays off the ball, set themselves up for better shots. And I think that'll complement each other really well for Quay Grant and Tyson Etienne. They'll probably split time at the point guard spot. Etienne shot 40% from deep last year. Grant, I believe, also shot about 40% for West Texas A&M last year at the Division II level. I'm just excited to see how that guard dynamic plays out. I think it'll work really well. And then you have pieces around them like Dexter Dennis and Morris Udeze. You add Kenny Poto, who is a 6'10 freshman. He's able to shoot the ball from deep. Joe Pleasant, who knocked down those 2 free throws and knocked off Texas in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Ricky Council had a very solid year last year. So this Wichita State team, it's not the deepest team by any means, but I am very much in on the guard duo of Quay Grant and Tyson Etienne, and that's why I have them third.
Yeah, I think they're like a pretty clear third because, like, you still have question marks with Cincinnati, SMU, UCF. the entire rest of the league after UCF. But yeah, with Wichita State, I think you know what you have in Tyce A&T, and he is a very good basketball player, good scorer, solid shooter as well. And he's just very good at putting the ball in the hoop, which is exactly what you need. Quay Grant, I think, probably plays the point because it worked well last year when they had Alterique Gilbert playing the point, and Quay Grant, I think, will kind of take that Alterique Gilbert type role. Dexter Dennis will, of course, start for them. Morris Udeze is certainly very good inside, and I guess Joe Pleasant probably takes the starting spot from Trey Wade, although I can see it being Ricky Council the fourth as well.
Yeah.
So
Speaking
I think
of Alterique Gilbert, by the way, even though that shot almost went down against Drake, he could have had a much better shot.
Yeah, but he got the shot he did. And
by the way, that game sucked. I mean, that might be the worst game of the tournament. That game was terrible.
There's got to be worse.
I mean, probably.
It was a fun suck.
No, it wasn't though. Like nobody made shots, so like it was a rather disappointing game.
Yeah. But I mean, Wichita State, I think they'll be right around the bubble, and if they can, I guess they could beat both Memphis and Houston at home while taking care of business in the non-con, not losing any bad games. I mean, they can make the tournament.
Yeah, definitely. I think right now, if I was a bracketologist, they'd be in the tournament for me.
Yeah, I think they're maybe out,
but they'll find their way.
Yeah. Oh, they're in.
Okay, see, they're in.
11. So, right on the bubble.
There we go.
Next team up, it is Cincinnati. They now have Wes Miller. John Brannon deserved to get fired, and thankfully did get fired. Kind of somewhat of a rebuilding year, but they also bring in, they have some nice experienced players. They have David DeJulius, Jeremiah Davenport, Micah Woods. They bring in Abdul Adu from Mississippi State. They have Odi Uguama. They bring in John Newman, Hayden Koval, Mike Saunders can kind of run some point a little bit as well. I don't think this team has NCAA tournament level talent, but answering Tristan's question from yesterday, I think they're the most likely at-large threat of the trio of SMU, Tulsa, and Cincinnati.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I think SMU is a more talented team, but Wes Miller is going to bring the style that Cincinnati fans have been longing to see the past 2 years after Mick Cronin left for UCLA. They want to see that hard-nosed toughness on defense, and that's exactly what Wes Miller brings to the table. Each of the last 4 seasons, his defenses have been top 100 in KenPom. Obviously, at UNC Greensboro, that's really impressive. I mean, they're 26th in defensive efficiency 2 years ago, but they really struggled shooting the ball the last 2 years. 29% from deep last year, 31 the year before, 62% from the foul line 2 years ago. But this year they have much better shooters on the roster, and obviously Cincinnati is a big step up from UNC Greensboro. You get Jeremiah Davenport, 6'7", can really shoot the ball from outside. He's going to be a big piece. David DeJulius, he's a really smooth point guard. He spent some solid years at Michigan. And then you have a guy like Micah Adams-Woods. You add, see, this is what Wes Miller did last year at UNCG. He rotated about 4 big men in and out, and he added a lot of big men on this team with Abdul Adu, Hayden Koval, Odi Oguama, and then Jarrett Hensley, who came with him from UNC Greensboro. See, he's going to rotate them in and out also. He'll have that 4-man, big man rotation. They'll probably all play about 15 to 20 minutes, and they all do a little bit of something different. Adu plays tough defense. Oguama's athletic. Koval can shoot and block shots, and Hensley also can shoot a little bit. And, a guy like Mason Madsen coming back, he's a good shooter. AJ McInnes, who came with him from UNC Greensboro also, he can shoot the ball from deep. John Newman, he's a really good athlete that just never got going at Clemson. He showed a lot of flashes but never took that next step. I think there's definitely talent on this team to where they can be in the NCAA tournament. And also Mike Saunders, one of the speediest players in college basketball. I think he's poised for a big jump. But this team could be an NCAA tournament level team. And if there's one coach not named Kelvin Sampson that I'm betting on in this conference the most, just as like a pure great coach that could get his team to the tournament, it's Wes Miller.
Yeah, I agree. Wes Miller is he's the real deal. He's a very good head coach. I don't know. I would say it's close between him and like Penny Hardaway is just going to recruit better players, so he's
on
I think
court
going
though.
to have more. Yeah, on the court, I think Wes Miller is probably number 2 in this league, though, behind like Kelvin Sampson. I think it's the best like basketball coach, but Wes Miller probably is number 2.
Is there 5 better coaches in the country than Kelvin Sampson at the moment? I don't think so.
Probably.
I don't think so. On the court, I don't know if there's 5 better coaches.
I'll say this: like Kelvin gets the best out of his players. So
I just think every year I feel like we're all kind of like last year. I wasn't very in on Houston. I'm just like, they lost Nate Hinton. That's gonna be a big loss. It ends up not mattering. That's kind of what Houston's able to do every year. And year out, we're just like, okay, well, they lose this guy. They're definitely going to take that step back this year, but it just never happens. They're always really good.
Yeah. Kelvin Sampson's very good, but I mean Wes Miller, I think he's got a good rotation here at Cincinnati. Jeremiah Davenport is, I think, going to be a very good player. They have DeJulius, Mike Adams, Woods. I like that kind of backcourt combination. You can play Mason Madsen, John Newman minutes at the 3, maybe play Davenport at the 4. You could play Davenport at the 3.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of mix that up a little bit. I guess theoretically could, if you wanted to, just have a giant lineup with Davenport at the 3. You could have like Adu and Oguama or Hayden Koval. Probably don't play Adu or Hayden Koval together, but
no, I would do that because Koval can shoot. So you have a defender and a shooter.
Okay, I can get behind it. It's going to be interesting to see what Wes Miller ultimately does with his like rotations. But I don't think this team has. Yeah, I think they're like I'd put Memphis, Houston like tier 1 of this league. I think Wichita State's like a tier above Cincinnati, but I think Cincinnati is the best of like the 4, 5, 6 of them, SMU, and UCF.
Yeah, I would have it tier 1 Memphis and Houston, tier 2. I would put Wichita and Cincinnati together.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're closer to SMU though to Wichita. That's just my thoughts though.
No, yeah, they're all kind of close at this point.
Yeah. I guess should we get into SMU? They have Kendrick Davis, who is very good at basketball. Yeah, he's awesome. He was one of the players I was considering for Player of the Year. We'll dive into that a little bit later, but yeah, he's an awesome basketball player. They bring in the Weathers brothers, Marcus and Michael Weathers. They have Emmanuel Bamboo Dell. They have Isaiah Jassy. They bring in Tristan Clark, which if he can play would be absolutely huge. So I mean they have a great collection of guards. If Tristan Clark can perform, I mean maybe have some NCAA tournament level upside.
Yeah, there's definitely talent on this team. Like you said, the Weathers brothers. One comes in from Duquesne. Michael comes in from Duquesne, and I definitely said that wrong. Michael comes in from Texas Southern, and Marcus comes in from Duquesne. Emmanuel Bandumel had a good year last year. Zach Nuttall shot almost 40% from deep. He was the Southland Player of the Year for Sam Houston State. He'll complement Kendrick Davis very well next to him on the perimeter. Bandumel can shoot the ball. That's a question for me with this team, though. There's just not a ton of shooting besides Bandumel and Nuttall. Davis can shoot the ball, but he's not a high volume shooter from deep. So that's definitely something I don't love about this team. And then you look at Tristan Clark. If we're betting on SMU being a tournament team, I feel like we're putting a lot of stock into Tristan Clark. And look, I like Tristan Clark a lot as a talent. You look at what he did in 2018, 2019, 14 a game, 6 rebounds, 2.4 blocks, and shot 73% from the field in 14 games. But he also hasn't really played in like 2 calendar years. So that's a long time ago at this point. I mean, that's almost, like 3 seasons ago? So that's not recently. And the last time he played, which was in 2019, 2020, for a portion of that year, he had 4 points per game and 2 rebounds per game. Just injuries really hampered what could have been a promising career for Tristan Clark. He did medically retire last year, but he decided to come back and get a fresh start back home in Texas. Or I guess Baylor's also in Texas. But he's back at He's at SMU now. And I think this team is talented, but it's not even the most talented SMU squad we've seen recently. I mean, you look at the team of a few years ago with Isaiah Mike and Ferron Hunt. How did that team not make the NCAA tournament? Tyson Jolly on that team, too, with Kendra Davis. The fact that that team couldn't make the NCAA tournament doesn't give me much hope for this team making the NCAA tournament.
I mean, even this past season, they had Davis, they had Ferron Hunt, Bam Duell, Tyson Jolly, Ethan
Jolly was
Shagwell.
hurt, though, to be fair.
Yeah,
For
but
a
I
portion of the
mean,
year.
they weren't even like close. Like,
No.
it didn't matter if Jolly was healthy. Yornay as well. Like,
I forgot Yornay was on SMU, honestly.
Yeah. The issue is not the talent on the team. I think the issue is Tim Jankovic just isn't a very good basketball coach. He's going to recruit enough players to kind of be competitive in this league. Like, they'll probably finish 5th or 6th in this league. They don't, they don't have that like tournament level, like they're not overwhelming talent wise to where like you can bet on them making the tournament. And Tim Jankovic is not a coach who's consistently lifted up his teams into being a tournament level team. If Tristan Clark can be what he was in 2018-19 before having the ACL injury, I mean, then you can maybe say, okay, that's a very good team. But the last I saw of Tristan Clark, he was getting dunked on by Oscar Shibwe and Udoka Azubuike. Like those are the last 2 memories I have of Tristan Clark. So not exactly the most promising things. And he'll probably get dunked on by Jalen Durant this year. That's just going to be how it goes.
Yeah.
But I like the guard tandem. You could argue they have some of the best guards, in this American. Like you could say, I think Wichita maybe has a better guard tandem. I think Houston maybe does, but like Kendrick Davis, Marcus Weathers, Emmanuel Bandudel, like Michael Weather, like talk about very good guards. It's just the front court I have questions with, and I just don't think this is a tournament team. I think NIT is probably if they make the NIT, it should be considered like a moderate success of a season. But yeah, I just don't see NCAA tournament with this team.
Yeah, and to be fair to SMU last year, they did only play 17 games, so obviously COVID did play a big factor on them. And 2 of those games, one was in the NIT and one was in the conference tournament. So they only played 15 regular season games, and they didn't play for a month between February and March. But you look at 2019-2020, that was a really good team. They finished 28th in offensive efficiency on KenPom. They finished 88th in overall KenPom ranking, though, because they were 202nd in defensive efficiency. That's a
Not
problem.
Good.
Yeah, that's a problem. It was much better last year, but their offense wasn't as good last year. So let's find like a happy medium somewhere in there.
I think it'll go back to what it was 2 years. Like they'll be great offensively and terrible defensively. That's my take.
Yeah, I could see it. I think they'll be like 50 in offensive efficiency again and probably like 75 to 100 range in defense. I just don't see this as a tournament team.
Yeah, nor do I. UCF, I also do not see as a tournament team, but hey, they have some talent. They bring back Darius Perry, Brandon Mahan, Darian Green, Isaiah Adams, Dre Fuller Jr. That is, I believe, 4 of their top 5 scorers, and then add in C.J. Walker, who's an athletic beast. So I mean, they returned pretty much everyone from a season ago, but they weren't necessarily that great a season ago. They were 11-12, mediocre in the American, 8-10 in the American. So while they do return pretty much everyone, they bring in Cheek, Mayback, Jiang. I don't see the upside here with this team.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. I do think there is solid upside, but again, like this is a borderline tournament team at best. They're not going to be safe in the tournament by any means at any point. Darius Perry was awesome coming in from Louisville. I didn't expect him to be the kind of player he was. Brandon Mahan was good. He had a 30-point outing against Florida State, but didn't keep that up throughout the season, which was a problem for UCF. Like you said, Chekmabake Zhang, I believe it's pronounced, from UNLV. He's a double-double threat every night. Tyne Freeman is one of the top JUCO recruits from Indian Hills Community College. He was a top 150 recruit coming in to the college ranks, and he started his career at Missouri State, but dealt with injuries, which led him going to the JUCO route. Isaiah Adams had a very solid freshman season. Tony Johnson could be a high upside guard off the bench. There's definitely talent on this team, but I think they'll be improved. I just don't think they're a tournament team. Like, I think they can definitely win some games. Maybe they'll give like Memphis a scare, but overall, I just don't see them as a tournament level team. I mean, you look at when they made the tournament a few years ago, 2018, 2019, they were good. I mean, but they also weren't even great that year. So it's just like, it's tough. I think they're a top 75 team in the country, but not like a top 50 team.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think UCF, they're like clearly better than the rest of the teams that we'll talk about in the American coming up shortly. Like Darius Perry's a good player. I think he is a kind of good fit at UCF where he's not, no offense to Louisville, they have some higher expectation, and UCF, I think going down a level was definitely good for him. Brandon Mahan can just shoot the crap out of the basketball. Like you look at that jump shot, that's what you want to teach your kids how to shoot a basketball. Like, I mean, Isaiah Adams, Darian Green, like that's, two really good shooters. Like the shooting is there. CJ Walker is certainly, I mean, there may be no player that jumps out of the gym better than CJ Walker.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a starting lineup of Perry, Darian Green, Brandon Mahan, Isaiah Adams, C.J. Walker is certainly very good. You bring Dre Fuller off the bench. You can have Chick Me, Beck, Jiang come off the bench. Like that's a very good starting seven. Uh, I'm kind of getting a little bit more bought into UCF. I still don't see NCAA tournament, but if you told me, hey, they're on the bubble with 2 weeks left, and then they fade late and lose to like Houston or Cincinnati or someone like that down the stretch to miss the tournament. Like I could see that happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Next team. This was where our first difference came. I had Tulsa at 7. You had Tulsa at 9. I had Temple at 8. You had Temple at 7. So Temple ends up being our next team here. But why do you love Temple? Let's just start there.
I wouldn't say I love Temple. I don't necessarily love any of the teams outside of the 6 we already talked about. But Temple has a lot of young, talented players that are going to take that next step in this upcoming year. You have Caleb Battle, who was very good coming in from Butler. Damian Dunn, now as a sophomore, he should be in for a very good season. Jeremiah Williams, also a sophomore. All three of those guys are 6'5". 2 of them can play on the ball if you need them to. Then you return Jake Forrester, who is very solid inside for Temple. I mean, you don't have a star on this team, really. I think you have a few really solid players with Williams, Battle, and Dunn. But those are all 3 younger guys who are ready to take a jump next year. I mean, 2 of them with Battle and Dunn averaged 13 points per game. Williams averaged 9 a game and 4 assists. I just think there's a lot of upside with this team. They aren't super deep either, but I think that they could be a team that pulls off a couple upsets maybe.
Yeah, I can see that. Like I like the Khalif, battle when pick up when they did it. I think he was kind of like thrown out of the side, after struggling his first year at Butler. But he was like pretty good a season ago. I think Jeremiah Williams can kind of take a step forward. I like Ty Strickland as well. You obviously have Jake Forrester, Sage Tolbert, Damian Dunn could be like a high upside type player. Quincy Adukiona is another like player that could be very interesting this season. So I think this team, Aaron McKee coming in has struggled, certainly replacing Fran Dunphy thus far. But I mean, this team I don't think will be necessarily terrible. I kind of see, I think they're like in that tier with Tulsa as like the next best teams that aren't the 6 previously mentioned.
Yeah, I guess I could lead off on Tulsa here because that's what we're talking about next. But I'm just not super in on this Tulsa team. They were fine last year. They somehow beat Houston, which was just an absolute stunner to me. It was a home game, so that was, it is what it is, of course. But they also lost to Tulane at home, and they lost to UCF at home, and they lost to Cincinnati at home, and they lost to Tulane again. So this was just a really not good team last year that finished outside the top 100 in KenPom, and you lose Brandon Brashall. You lose Elijah Joyner. You lose Darian Jackson. You lose Austin Ritchie. So you lose 4 very valuable players, 3 of which were starters, and you didn't add a ton to really get better. I mean, Jariah Horn came back from Colorado. He has good size and shooting ability. You had Nikita, the JUCO transfer. I'm not even going to take a guess on the last name. I've seen him play for sure a number of times in highlights and all that, but I have no idea how to say his last name. I'm not going to lie. It's just a very complicated last name to say. It's about 15 letters long. But he's a very skilled big man that can pass, runs the floor well, coming in from Northeastern Oklahoma A&M. So that's going to be a good piece for them down low. But there's just not a ton on this team I love. You get Sam Griffin coming in from UT Arlington. But, yeah, like I said, I mean, this team wasn't very good last year, and they got worse. So
I'm going to, say his name, Konstantioniskivi. I think that might be it.
yeah, let's just go with
That's
Nikita, the JUCO transfer.
But, I think getting Jariah Horn into the rotation, coming back, I think that will be good. You obviously have Curtis Haywood. That's a player that I think can take a step forward. I don't like this Tulsa team. I'll say this, like, I just think they're kind of like when I ranked them 7, they were kind of like the best of the rest, because like Tulane, I think is going to be terrible. South Florida, East Carolina, I don't like either of those teams.